What hurts more? To live without meaning, or to realize you are living without meaning? This is the question that silently echoes in the minds of millions of people who, in a moment of terrifying clarity, have awakened to an uncomfortable truth about human existence. While most remain asleep, anesthetized by the frantic pace of consumption, digital distractions, and the incessant pursuit of momentary pleasures, some awaken. And this awakening rarely comes without pain. You might be one of those people. Someone who, in a moment of forced silence, perhaps during a sleepless night or after a significant loss, looked at their life and felt that inexplicable emptiness. That unsettling feeling that, despite all your material and social achievements, something fundamental is missing. That all the things you were conditioned to pursue do not fill the hole that exists inside you. Viktor Frankl, an Austrian psychiatrist who survived 4 Nazi concentration camps, including Auschwitz, reached a powerful conclusion about this phenomenon. The deepest existential suffering comes not simply from living without meaning, but from realizing you are living without meaning while others continue to sleep, unaware of the void they carry. Frankl did not arrive at this understanding through comfortable contemplation in an academic office. His wisdom was forged in the most extreme circumstances a human being can face. Stripped of everything, including the manuscript of his first work on psychotherapy, he observed how prisoners with seemingly the same physical conditions responded in radically different ways to the horror of the camps. Some gave up quickly, losing the will to live, while others maintained a surprising inner strength, even as their bodies wasted away. The difference, he realized, was not in the external conditions, but in the ability to find or create meaning even amidst unimaginable suffering. This observation formed the basis of what would later become logotherapy, a psychotherapeutic approach focused on the search for meaning as the primary motivation for human beings, not pleasure or power, as other psychological schools suggested. What Frankl discovered, and what can illuminate your own painful awakening, is that the existential vacuum, this feeling of meaninglessness, is not a pathology or a defect. It is a sign, a call, perhaps the most important one you will ever receive. It is your deepest humanity crying out for something more than mere biological or social existence. While billions of people spend their entire lives in a deep sleep, anesthetized by distractions and superficial pleasures, you have been touched by what Frankl would call the will to meaning. And this awakening, though initially painful, is in fact a gift of incalculable value, an opportunity that many will never have. Think about the people around you. How many of them spend their lives in a routine of work, consumption, entertainment, and sleep, only to repeat the cycle the next day, without ever deeply questioning the purpose of it all? They may experience moments of dissatisfaction or boredom, of course, but they quickly fill these moments with more distractions. A new relationship, a new purchase, a new series to watch, more hours of endless scrolling on social media. Modern society is exceptionally efficient at providing ways for us to avoid confronting the existential vacuum. And there is a $1 trillion market dedicated to maintaining this state of collective slumber. Because sleeping consumers are predictable, manipulable, and profitable. You, however, feel that pain. That restlessness that doesn't disappear with another episode, another purchase, another like, or another drink. And this pain, this discomfort, this awakening to the lack of genuine meaning in your life and in the society around you can feel like a curse. How much easier it would be to simply not see, not feel, not know, to go back to sleep. But Frankl would argue that this pain is the beginning of something profoundly transformative. It is the birth of a higher consciousness, a call to an authentically human existence. There is a passage in the book Man's Search for Meaning where Frankl describes how, during a grueling forced march in the biting cold, he began to imagine conversations with his wife, not knowing if she was alive or dead in the camps. In that moment of extreme physical suffering, he experienced a revelation about love. For the first time in my life, I saw the truth as it is set into song by so many poets, proclaimed as the final wisdom by so many thinkers. The truth that love is the ultimate and the highest goal to which man can aspire. Even in conditions where his physical survival was at constant risk, Frankl discovered that meaning could be found through a connection to something or someone beyond himself. He realized that even when everything is taken from a person, one fundamental freedom remains: the freedom to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. This is the freedom that those who are asleep never fully exercise, because they never realize they possess it. The suffering of one who awakens while others sleep has several dimensions. There is the loneliness of seeing what others do not see. There is the frustration of trying to communicate your perception to those who remain asleep, only to be met with misunderstanding, indifference, or even hostility. There is the constant temptation to go back to sleep, to succumb to the comfortable distractions that society offers in abundance. And there is the daunting challenge of answering the call, of truly seeking and creating meaning in a world that seems indifferent or even hostile to this effort. Frankl observed in his clinical practice that many forms of contemporary psychological suffering, from depression to addiction, have their roots in what he called the existential vacuum. When the will to meaning is not satisfied, people often try to fill this void with inadequate substitutes. The will to pleasure, seeking stimulation and avoiding discomfort at all costs, or the will to power, seeking domination, control, and status. These substitutes may provide temporary relief, but they never truly fill the void. It is like trying to quench thirst with salt water, which only intensifies the dehydration. You may be asking yourself, if this awakening is so painful, wouldn't it be better to go back to sleep? Wouldn't it be easier to simply accept the conventional narratives about success and happiness, pursue the offered distractions, and avoid confronting the void? Frankl would answer with an emphatic no, because what is at stake is not just your personal comfort, but your humanity. What distinguishes us as human beings is precisely this capacity to transcend immediate conditions, to seek and create meaning, to transform suffering into accomplishment. By choosing existential sleep, you would be renouncing what is most precious and distinctive in your human nature. Furthermore, Frankl would argue that the suffering of awakening is not permanent. It is a transitional phase, painful but necessary, on the path to a fuller and more authentic existence. Like the pain of childbirth, it precedes the birth of something new and valuable. And just like physical birth, this process does not have to be faced alone. Others have awakened before you, and their insights can illuminate your path. Frankl is one of these guides, but there are many others from different philosophical, spiritual, and psychological traditions who have faced the existential vacuum and discovered ways to transform it into fulfillment. Frankl is one of these guides, but there are many others from different philosophical, spiritual, and psychological traditions who have faced the existential vacuum and discovered ways to transform it into fulfillment. So, how can we respond to this painful awakening? Frankl identified three main avenues through which human beings can discover meaning in their lives. The first is through creation, through meaningful work, by giving something to the world. The second is through experience, especially love, by receiving something from the world and from others. The third, perhaps the most profound, is through the attitude we adopt toward unavoidable suffering. Each of these avenues represents a form of self-transcendence, of going beyond oneself towards something or someone else. The path of creation is not limited to artistic or intellectual activities. Any work that genuinely contributes to the good of others can be a source of meaning. A carpenter who creates durable and beautiful furniture, a teacher who inspires their students, a doctor who alleviates suffering, a father or mother who raises their children with love and wisdom. All can find deep meaning in their work, as long as they see it not just as a means to make a living, but as a way of serving something greater than themselves. The path of experience involves receiving what the world has to offer with awareness and gratitude, experiencing the beauty of nature, the depth of authentic relationships, the truths revealed by art and science. Love, in particular, has a unique power to bestow meaning upon life. Not love as a mere feeling, but as an active commitment to the well-being and growth of another person. Frankl describes how, during his worst ordeals in the camps, the mental image of his wife and the hope of seeing her again gave him the strength to carry on. The meaning was not just in his personal survival, but in the possibility of being reunited with his beloved. The third path, the attitude toward unavoidable suffering, is perhaps Frankl's most distinctive contribution. There are sufferings we cannot avoid, losses we cannot reverse, limitations we cannot overcome. The question is not whether we will suffer, but how we will suffer, what meaning we will find in suffering. It is not about seeking suffering or glorifying it, but about recognizing that, even in the most extreme circumstances, we have the freedom to choose our attitude. This inner freedom, this ability to turn a personal tragedy into a human triumph, is what Frankl called the last of the human freedoms. A powerful example of this third path comes from Frankl's own experience in the camps. He tells of how, reduced to the most extreme physical misery, stripped of all material possessions, and separated from all his loved ones, he could still contemplate the beauty of a sunset through the barbed wire and find solace and strength in that experience. Not because the sunset changed his external situation, but because his attitude allowed him to transcend the immediate conditions and connect with something beautiful and enduring. These three paths are not mutually exclusive, and a life full of meaning usually involves all of them in different proportions. The important thing is to recognize that meaning is not something we can pursue directly like we pursue pleasure or avoid pain. Meaning emerges as a byproduct when we dedicate ourselves to a meaningful task, when we open ourselves to valuable experiences, or when we take on the responsibility of transforming our suffering into growth. The awakening to the meaninglessness in your current life may be painful, but it is also the beginning of a transformative journey. It is the call to a more conscious and authentic existence. It is the invitation to exercise your most fundamental freedom, the freedom to choose your attitude in any given circumstances, to find meaning even in the most challenging situations, to transform your suffering into human accomplishment. While others continue to sleep, pursuing goals they were programmed to seek without questioning their real value, you have the opportunity to awaken fully and live with consciousness and purpose. It will not be an easy path. There will be moments when the temptation to go back to sleep will be almost irresistible. Moments when the loneliness of awakening will seem unbearable. Moments when you will question if the effort is worthwhile. But as Frankl discovered in the most extreme circumstances imaginable, when we find meaning in our suffering, we acquire the ability to endure almost anything. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, whom Frankl often quoted, wrote, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." This sentence captures the essence of Frankl's discovery. Meaning does not eliminate suffering, but it transforms it. It does not make us immune to life's difficulties, but it gives us the strength to face them with dignity and even grow through them. And perhaps more importantly, meaning allows us to live not just as beings who react to circumstances, but as active creators of our own lives. You who awaken while others sleep, know that your awakening, though painful, is also a gift. It is the invitation to a fuller, more authentic, more truly human life. It is the call to transcend the limitations of social conditioning and discover your own meaningful path. It is the opportunity to transform your existential suffering into wisdom and compassion, not only for your own benefit, but for the benefit of all those around you. Perhaps your journey of awakening will inspire others to question their sleeping lives. Perhaps your search for meaning will create ripples that reach people you will never meet. Perhaps your example of living consciously in a world of sleepwalkers is precisely what someone in your circle needs to find the courage to face their own emptiness. As Frankl wrote, "What enlightens a man is his confrontation with the potential meaning inherent and dormant in each situation." We live in an age of unprecedented disconnection and fragmentation. Despite all our technological interconnectivity, we have never been so lonely, so anxious, so hungry for something that many cannot even name. The existential vacuum that Frankl identified in the mid-20th century has only intensified in the digital age. Distractions have multiplied, pressures have increased, and conventional narratives about success and happiness have become even less satisfying for those who stop to question. Your awakening, far from being an anomaly or a pathology, may be the beginning of an essential response to this collective crisis of meaning. At the end of this exploration, we return to the initial question: what hurts more, to live without meaning or to realize you are living without meaning? The answer, through the lens of Frankl, becomes clear. The real pain is not in realizing the lack of meaning, but in remaining unaware of it, wasting the potential for a truly meaningful existence. The awakening, however uncomfortable, is the necessary first step toward healing. It is the recognition of a thirst that, once identified, can be quenched. It is the diagnosis that makes the treatment possible. It is the moment of clarity that precedes transformation. If you identify with this awakening, know that you are not alone, even when you feel isolated among those who continue to sleep. Others have walked this path before you and left maps to guide your journey. Frankl is one of these cartographers of the human soul, and his message continues to resonate decades after being articulated in circumstances that few of us can imagine. His logotherapy is not just a psychological theory, but a testament to the human potential to transcend even the most adverse conditions through the search for meaning. The suffering of those who perceive the truth while others sleep is not a punishment, but a call to awaken more fully, to take responsibility for creating a meaningful life, to transform the existential vacuum into fulfillment. A call to exercise the most essentially human freedom, the freedom to choose our attitude in any circumstance, to find or create meaning even when we face the inevitable tragic triad of pain, guilt, and death. A call, ultimately, to live not just as passive consumers of existence, but as active creators of lives worthy of being lived, of stories worthy of being told. If this content resonated with you, if you recognized yourself as someone who is awakening in a world of sleepwalkers, consider sharing this message, not to accumulate numbers or social validation, but because perhaps, somewhere, someone is going through the same painful awakening and needs to hear that they are not alone, that their pain has a purpose, that their suffering can be transformed into meaning. If this video touched something deep within you, subscribe to this channel. We are not here to offer easy solutions or momentary distractions, but to walk together in the search for the meaning that transforms not only individual suffering, but potentially the world. As Frankl reminds us, even in the darkest of circumstances, we always have the freedom to choose our response, to find light in the darkness, to create meaning where others see only absurdity. And in this freedom lies our most essential dignity as human beings.